Hello, fellow artists. Okay, here we are, Falco part 3. I am doing the left side of his face. What I'm doing now is creating a base layer for the coat to shine through, for the lighter colors to come through. So I'm basically going light to medium to dark right now. This is Champagne, Derwent Lightfast Color Pencils, Champagne. And now I'm just erasing a little bit of my grid lines there. I make them kind of dark at first, and then I just lightly erase them as I go, because I definitely use them as I go. Because right now I'm going to get the rest of his jaw, his mouth. So I need the grid, but I don't, because it's this light part is right here. I just want to make sure that the grid doesn't come through. I don't see it. So that's what I'm doing right here. Then once I do that, always use a brush to get rid of the crumbs there instead of your hands. You don't want any oils or anything on your paper. Now here I am, now that I have the squares pretty much lightened up, I'm gonna do a light layer of champagne. Then once this is finished, I go in with my midtones and get the other side of his mouth. Basically just kind of draw it out so I have where my midtones and my dark colors are gonna be. So here I am with the black pencil. This is all Derwent Lightfast. I may have used a little Polychromos black later on, but this is Derwent black, and I'm getting the outline of the mouth, following my grid. Then I go in with some midtones underneath for the fur and the shadows and all that sort of thing. So I basically am just getting the lay of the land basically for where his mouth is, where all the little creases are, where the shadows of his fur, and I just kind of mark those out. This is a really dark black area here, so that's why I'm using black and kind of going over it a few times, because I know that's where it's going to be. Then I go with a mid-tone, like just a brown, and create the shadows and the mid-tones of the fur. So I'll speed this up just a little bit and get to the fur underneath his mouth. So now what I'm doing is I'm kind of working my way up towards his mouth with the fur. This is taupe, and I'm just getting the mid layers, the mid colors in, figuring out where, again, the shadows and the mid tones of his fur are. So you can see how sharp my pencil is. And I zoomed in a little bit here because I want you to see how I'm holding the pencil almost straight up and down. That way I get a fine point, and I'm also working in clumps. I'm not really doing hair by hair. You can see it's more sections and clumps. Now I'm using the black again, and I'm going kind of the same as the other side. I know that it's going to be really dark. He has some really black fur. And so I'm getting my black in now, kind of an outline of where that black clump is going to be. And I'm pretty confident it's right there, so I'm pressing pretty hard. And that's why I have my hand kind of straight up and down like that. And you can see I'm actually doing some cross hatching there. So I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the really black dark area, because I don't, even though you can erase on drafting film, I really don't want to have to erase black, because that just, it's not good. Then when I go over it with pencil, there is the tiny little tooth the drafting film has. I don't want to ruin it with erasing a lot in an area. So I'm confident that this is the black area. And then what I'm going to do is go back with the light and the mid-tones and go over the black. So I'm using the black as a guide. You can see I have the area underneath. Now this is a yellow ochre, I believe, and getting in his golden hues, and I'm overlapping a little bit on the black and getting in the little crevices on the black. And you can see I'm not doing hair by hair. That will come later when I use the slice tool, and I can use the eraser to do some sections, some highlights, and then use a slice tool for some wispies. Okay, now here is a taupe again, and Mars Violet, Derwent Lightfast, which is a really pretty kind of purpley gray color. I used that a lot for the undertone. It was a really pretty color. I know it looks really violet-y right now, but I know I'm going to go over it with brown and sepia, which will tone down the violet and the purple a lot. Now this is again just kind of a little area, little areas that I'm using for reference. Just tiny little fur, little clumps of fur that actually helps me. It will help me know where the mouth ends. That's kind of what I'm doing, is figuring out where the mouth ends. So you can see I filled it in a little bit there. Now I'm going in with Odorless Mineral Spirits. And I have really just not that much of the Odorless Mineral Spirits on my brush. And I'm barely touching it, if you can kind of tell. I'm just the top part to break it up and trying to get a little fur and wispy, because if I press too hard, or like kind of right there, it just lips up the pigment. So it's almost like watercolor, where you really are looking for that perfect amount of water on your brush. With Odorless Mineral Spirits on drafting film, you're looking for that perfect amount of OMS on your brush. You don't want a lot at all. It's nothing like when you use hot press watercolor paper or even Bristol. There's no absorbency. There's no cotton to absorb the OMS. So you just need a tiny little bit just to blend the wax and the oils. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel. Thank you. So here I am. I've got some pigment on my brush now. So I'm using it to make like some fluffy fur. And the Odorless Mineral Spirits has kind of dried a little bit on my brush. So now I'm able, I don't know if you can tell in the camera, but I'm not picking up a little bit right there, but I'm not picking up as much pigment. So I'm just trying to blend it and create fur, create hairs, and just work in clumps. I think I've got a little too much on there now, or that's what I wanted. I wanted to create more of a highlight there right next to the black. So now that I have some pigment on my brush, you can just kind of see what I'm doing. It's hardly wet with OMS, but there's enough on there where I can put the pigment, it's depositing on the drafting film in other areas. And creating the shadow under the tongue there. And softening the edges of the pencils so it looks like fluffy fur. So it doesn't look like a pencil point. Okay, now here's what I was saying earlier with the eraser to make highlights. Now this is not wet, this is dry. It's not wet from OMS or anything. I'm lifting up the pigment to create the highlights. You can see on the other side. That's kind of what I did. And what I'm doing there, I don't think I caught it on camera, but I'm cleaning the eraser with my pencil sharpener, my sanded paper pencil sharpener. So what I do is I have the sanded paper that I use to when I don't want to put my pencil in the sharpener. I just want to maybe sand down the point a little bit. Well, I use that to get the pigment off of the eraser, and I can even sharpen the eraser, kind of make a point out of it. I will have to get that on camera for you. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, and I'll chime in when there's something else exciting coming up. Okay, now that I have that side kind of blended out, I'm letting it dry, and I'm gonna go back to the tongue. This is Mars Violet. Again, I use this a lot in the fur. This is, I'm looking to create the shadows of the tongue. There's lots and lots of colors in there when you look at the reference photo. And I don't, you know, I'm trying to keep that highlight there on his right side. And then in the reference photo, there's the kind of this cool orangey red color, almost I can't think of the color. Anyway, on the edge of his tongue there, you can kind of see what I did. I think that really helps to give the curve of the tongue. That and the white highlight. So, you know, you really want to try to, when their tongue is hanging out, it's hanging down. So I was really trying to achieve that effect. And I think that orange, the end of the tongue there, really helps do that. So here I am going with the eraser again, getting some highlights on the nose. So I'm just kind of jumping around. There is one tool that I don't know if I've mentioned, but it's the Derwent pencil blender. You'll see I use that here in a few seconds to blend the colors, the pigments together. I really like the Derwent pencil blender, it's called. And for me, it works really well on drafting film. The pigments just blend nicely together, which you'll see here in a second. There you go. That is a Derwent blending pencil, and it just helps to soften the edges, and it does pick up the pigment a little bit, so it will lighten the pigment if you go over a dark, area, which, you may want. It was great for creating some highlights for the fur and for blending the pencils. So this is a big must-have for me for working on drafting film, the Derwent pencil blender. I'm going to play a little music now for you, and I will chime back in when I go and work on the tongue again. I was having some issues with the tongue, so that is in a little bit. I will put that marker, that time marker for you in the description. So enjoy the music. So here I am doing the tongue, and you can see I'm using Polychromos. Polychromos has the perfect pinks for this tongue. Pinks and some kind of violets, pinky violets. But again, I mentioned it earlier, there's that orange at the end of his tongue that just really stands out when you look at the reference photo. So I really wanted to make sure I got that right, because I felt like that helps with the curve of his tongue, give the illusion of the curve. So I really wanted to get that right. So that's a kind of a coral color is what I was looking for. Now this is back to Derwent Lightfast. This is I think it's lavender. Anyway, it's a very purpley color, and I'm doing really light layers, and then I bring Mars Violet back in for the shadows to get like the crevice there in the tongue. And I'm using the pencil blender, and I do some OMS, the eraser. I kind of do a little bit of everything on the tongue because I was having a bit of an issue with it. Maybe because the Polychromos don't really blend as well with drafting film. Like, it was oil, and I was just kind of used to blending with the Derwent Lightfast, so maybe that was it. I noticed that right back in the back of his tongue is like a really crimson-y violet color. It's actually really pretty. So I didn't want to do too much black. I didn't want it to be a flat black there. So I'm adding some like a crimson color there. And then I go over it with some darker colors and have that shadow kind of gradually blend out. Okay, now this color, I'm getting my midtones in, really starting to blend now. There are a ton of colors I'm using here. Well, not a ton, but I was really surprised how many colors I used for the tongue. Probably about 6 or 7. And it was a learning experience. I don't, like I said, I don't know why. The fuchsia from Polychromos was probably one of the best colors because it blended the darker colors, the fuchsia, nicely, as you kind of see what's happening here. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps my channel. Thank you. And I'm speeding it up a little bit because I'm doing such light layers that it's really taking a lot of blending and time, really, to get all the pigments on there. I'm finally getting my edges. And then I'll go over it to create the highlights with the eraser and white and the pencil blender. Now I am doing the shadow of the tongue, and this is with brown and auburn color, Derwent Lightfast. I'm kind of switching back and forth, a little sepia. Then I'm blending it with the pencil blender. Now the shadow of the tongue it's really important. That again will give it the kind of the realistic 3D effect. You know, you always want to have a shadow, have your shadows right. Making sure it's dark enough, making sure my values are dark enough for sure. Then go in with the pencil blender and blend it out. Back to the nose here, and this is a sky blue color that I'm using for the highlights of the nose. It helps, you know, because it's basically he's outdoors, so he's reflecting the sky. And the noses are usually wet, right? So we want to kind of emulate the moisture in his nose, and then it's reflecting the sky. So I do a light blue for highlights, and then I will use an eraser to create like the super white highlights. This is the blending pencil again. Then I go in and use some darker values and use an eraser to get some lighter values in certain areas. And yeah, just kind of, this is kind of the fun part, because the nose can get really realistic looking if you pay attention to where the highlights are and where your super dark values are, because your dark values will make your highlights look lighter. So you want a dark value next to your light value. This looks like violet or nightshade, which I love using with black. So I'm just doing a very light layer, nightshade, and then I'll do black over it. And this is nearing the end of this part 3 tutorial. The rest of the tutorial will be, well, the next tutorial will be his legs and paws, body, getting down to the good stuff. So I'm wrapping up here, and see ya in the next video.